welcome all. Excited to be a part of today's Dam and Museums conference. There's been a lot of great information shared already and hoping to continue on that trend here in the next 20 minutes or so. Since we've only got 20 minutes, we'll jump right in here. And to get us started, just wanted to provide a further introduction. I'm James Wanke, Senior Implementation Consultant at Widen. Who is Widen, you might ask? We are a leader in cloud-based DAM. So we partner with over 660 organizations worldwide. We were founded in 1948. Now you might guess or assume, and you'd be correct in that we weren't doing DAM back in 1948, but we have been doing DAM for 20 plus years, along with some other platforms and tools that we specialize in. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin. We are 150 employees strong, most of those based out of the US, but we do have a strong employee grouping as well in the UK. So that's just the lens that I'll be coming to you from here today, and thought it was good to define who Widen is and where we stand within the DAM sphere. So the agenda, we're going to define together what it means to embrace and thrive. So hence the topic or the subject of our conversation today, embracing and thriving in the digital future of museums. We're going to define those terms. We're then going to shift how you can thrive in the digital world and what role does DAM play? And then where do you go from here in the coming days, weeks, months ahead? And how can you start putting this into action? So what does it mean to embrace and thrive? Great question. I'm glad you asked. I went to dictionary.com to define these naturally, and I was kind of surprised on what I found here for embracing. I thought it was kind of funny that the first definition for embracing was to take or clasp in the arms or to hug. We're not doing a lot of hugging these days or a lot of physical embracing. So that's not what we're talking about here when we talk about embrace. It is also likely not to receive gladly or eagerly or accept willingly. A lot of us have been pushed towards our digital initiatives based on the global pandemic and based on some of the other conditions in our world. And so oftentimes that's not something that we likely received eagerly or gladly, but we've been put into it by no fault of our own. What we are talking about here today, though, is to embrace an opportunity or to adopt. And so embracing digital as the current and the future of the museum space is where we're headed today. And these are the embrace definitions that we are referring to here. Turning over to thriving, this is probably a more standard definition here, but this was right in line with what I was thinking, which is to prosper, be fortunate, successful, or one of our favorite words at Widen is flourish. So flourishing through reimagining how you can thrive in the digital sphere. One caveat before we move on is that I am not here to squash your physical spaces, hopes and dreams, or anything of that nature. What I will be talking about digital is a way of or an avenue of amplifying and promoting your organization and your physical spaces. Definitely not a replacement. I'm hopeful as you are that we'll be returning to some sense of normalcy in the near future. And so digital is the current and is the future, but is the current and future in a supporting manner of our physical spaces and our organization. So I'm going to walk through with you 5 steps on how you can create a thriving digital presence of your own. Now, I know we're all at various stages of the journey here, so these are going to be a little bit more generic in terms of steps, but I think a lot of these will apply to everyone, regardless of where you're at on the journey. Number 1 is developing a digital engagement strategy. So this may seem intuitive, but I think there are many out there that would say we skipped that step, or maybe we didn't dedicate as much time to that step as was necessary or warranted. And so that's why it's number 1 on this list. Developing that strategy should include a number of different components. A couple of those I've defined here. The first is, what is the desired outcome from your digital presence? This has different meaning for different organizations, depending on how you're looking for that digital sphere to promote your organization and your physical spaces. Some other considerations when you're defining this desired outcome is, what is your current state and what's realistic? Oftentimes we hear of these grand dreams, and it's always great to dream big, but we need to also make sure that we have some realism included in our strategy here and put proper phases and timelines in place within our strategy for that. Some of the example outcomes you might be desiring from your digital presence may include promoting your physical locations for that reopening or while those cannot be visited in person. And it may also then include some sort of virtual tours or maybe even some sort of monetization model to help generate some sort of revenue while you can't be generating that from your physical locations. Also include some success metrics so that you know when and if your digital engagement strategy has been successful. So that should be included in your strategy. Other things to consider including would be what changes are going to be needed. So of course, naturally, as we develop something new or something that is an update from where we were headed previously, it's going to be a lot of change involved from a lot of different individuals. So really focusing on what changes are needed. Maybe one of the most common ones is just the overall mindset of the various teams or organizations that are going to be a part of this, but then also thinking through your content creation process, your various platforms that you have, whether you have digital expertise in-house or whether you need to look elsewhere to find that digital expertise. And always be considering both your internal and external audiences. Speaking of audiences, really defining who is your target audience is also a critical component of your strategy. So, what are your target demographics? Based on those demographics or based on those audiences, what would be the proper outreach channels to reach them? And then what actions are you looking for them to take after you engage with them? Are you hoping that they will further promote? Are you hoping that they simply come and engage in your content that you've pushed out to your websites? So working kind of from the end result all the way back to our initial strategy that we're putting together to help achieve that end result. So that's number one, developing our digital engagement strategy. Number two is a digital engagement coalition. So this is a group of leaders that are going to help with what we've established within our digital engagement strategy. This should really be a diverse group of individuals that are going to all play a role in some way, shape, or form of our digital engagement strategy. Incorporate some stakeholders. Maybe this is one or multiple individuals that are really responsible for the success of your digital initiatives. Include your content owners, creators, contributors. They're really the experts in what content you have today. Is there content that can be used in its current form out in your digital sphere? Do there need to be updates to how they create that content or what they're thinking through as they create that content? And then last but not least, those digital experts I mentioned in the strategy, they should also be a part of that coalition. Hopefully they can assist with the technology, the platforms, and really the best practices, and as well as the behind the scenes execution. So you can really focus on your strategy and what's best for your organization. So number two, forming that digital engagement coalition. Number three, I think, is going to be near and dear to a lot of people's hearts in the audience here, because we are gathered here based on DAM and museums together, but organizing and planning our content. Organizing our content sounds maybe kind of easy, but we all know that a lot of times for especially organizations that have been around for a while, the content's in a lot of different places. And so first thing you need to ask yourself is your existing content digital ready? And by digital ready, we don't just necessarily mean, is it in a digital format, but is it in an accessible location? Is it able from its current state to be published out to your digital platforms or your digital means that are defined in your digital engagement strategy? Is your content organized and tagged in a meaningful way? And we all know that DAM can really help with that and be the platform that allows us to do that. And then, is our content engaging for a digital only audience? Oftentimes we need to think through that content that we already have. Is that something that is going to entice the proper actions that we're going for within a digital only sphere? So some of that content may include things like videos. You might have a great video, it might be 45 minutes long, that you have within your physical spaces that people can sit down and watch and kind of really envelop themselves into. But maybe for a digital only audience, we need to think about, should those be video clips? Maybe just snackable pieces of information that are broken down into 2 or 3 minute videos. Also, video tutorial or virtual tours, I should say, 3D renders, virtual events, all things to consider, and that you may or may not have content today that can help with some of those engagements. Also, you're going to want to think about aligning your future content creation. So I mentioned this during the strategy portion, but just circling back to that here, think about how your teams are going to plan for your content moving forward. Can you create content that is multi-purpose so that you're really making the most out of the content that's being created, both from a physical presence as well as from a digital presence? And then optimizing that content based on your outreach channels. So once you've determined what are those avenues that you're going to plan to reach out to your digital audience, optimizing that content based on formats, dimensions, and really overall alignment there across the board. So that's number 3, is organizing and planning your content. Number 4 is a big one of my favorites, but one that is often overlooked, and that is incorporating change management. So with any change, especially one as large as an update or a new initiative on digital, we need to incorporate change management because there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to take place for various groups. So the first part of change management is going to be defining a communications plan. I, for one, have never been part of a change where there's been too much communicated or where things have been overly communicated. So while it sounds kind of boring and not all that exciting, the communications plan can be a great way for you to engage with your internal and external audiences even before you make the change, letting them know that something is coming, really focusing on the why. Why are we making this change? Why is it going to benefit you? Focusing on the what's in it for me, since that's what everyone is concerned with as they go through their day-to-day. What's in it for me? Why should I care about this? And use that communications plan to really build excitement, maybe drop some hints or some cliffhangers as to what's to come to really build that excitement, generate that buzz around this change that is coming. Next, you also want to have a execution roadmap. Once you've defined that strategy, that of course is the high level goal of what we're after, but there are many tactical initiatives or tasks that need to be taken along the way in order to get there. So plan out each step of that journey, establish clear responsibility so everyone knows what they're responsible for and what they don't need to worry about at this point in time. And back that up, of course, with deadlines and have a contingency plan in place. There's going to be things that don't go as expected. So be flexible, be willing to adjust, and have some plans in place of how you're planning, how you're going to shift if those plans and do need to be adjusted. And then last but not least, don't forget about the reinforcement piece of change management. I think a lot of us think of change management as before and during the change, but know that change management should and is critical to continue after the change. So this may include feedback channels from your audiences or some way of getting feedback from your internal and external teams so that you can track that and measure that against the metrics you set out to within your engagement strategy. Always think about what's going to keep your audience coming back. This isn't a one-time set it and forget it. This is intended to be a journey that we take them on from here on moving forward. As I mentioned, current and future is what we're after here in this space. So that's number 4. And then last but not least, number 5 is executing, measuring, and refining. So this is the fun part. We get to put our plans into action. We get to launch that new digital experience that we've been working so hard on for some time. This can either be done in a phased approach or, if we're really going after it, a big bang approach. But communicate those changes. Hint, hint, I'm over communicating the need to communicate here. But make sure you communicate those changes before, during, and after. And then ready is always a subjective term. So you're never going to really feel that you've crossed everything off the list and that you're 100% ready. There's always going to be next steps. There's always going to be future priorities. But really get to a point where you're comfortable with it, where your coalition is comfortable, and then go for it. Launch something and use your measure and your measuring stick and your metrics to then refer back to how well you're tracking and what refinements are needed. So that measure, refer to your strategy, as I mentioned, have both quantitative and qualitative metrics, and then make sure you report out those results to hold yourself and your teams accountable, and then refine. You're going to have to prioritize. There's going to be a lot to uncover here as you engage in your digital journey. And so get used to prioritizing, get used to saying no in certain circumstances because we are focused on something else, and review and update that strategy as needed. So oftentimes we encourage a regular cadence, whether that be 6 months or a year, but also you reserve the right to update that on an as needed basis when conditions change or when is warranted. So those are our 5 steps. And some of you might be asking, well, what role does DAM play? We haven't really talked a lot about DAM yet. Well, you're in luck. If you need some DAM help, here we are, because the DAM possibilities are endless. I couldn't go through this without having at least one DAM pun. So here we are. But let's revisit those 5 steps, and let's talk about the role that DAM plays in each of these. For our digital engagement strategy, really DAM and the adjacent platforms to it are going to be the focal point of that digital engagement strategy. So if you've got a already created DAM strategy, you know, maybe adopt that for digital versus creating a whole new entire digital engagement strategy. So really focus on DAM and the platforms around it to be the core of that. Form your digital engagement coalition. This should incorporate a lot of your DAM sponsors, admins, and or power users. So no need to reinvent the wheel here. Incorporate those users that are already familiar with your ongoing digital initiatives and have them be the ones that are the experts in terms of where the DAM lives within that journey and within that strategy. Organized planned content. This one's probably the easiest one. You know, that's really the primary purpose of a DAM, is a centralized organized content hub. So that's where all that content is going to live to be published out to your digital channels. And then incorporate change management. This is where all of your change materials should live. So your communication plans, your training materials, and any other documentation that you need to have should all be incorporated into the DAM as well for shared visibility. And then executing, measuring, and refining. Naturally, DAM is going to be at the heart of the execution piece here, but can also then help with measuring, and it can be a critical area where we maybe need to refine the processes and how the DAM is being used as we move along our journey. So DAM can be used everywhere, and the possibilities, like I said, are endless. But how can you optimize your DAM for digital engagement? For anyone who's been around DAM long enough, you know that metadata is the most commonly used word when it comes to a DAM, and this is no different. Accurate, consistent, and comprehensive metadata is really the key. Making that content findable, making it usable, and making sure that it's filled out in all cases where it's needed is absolutely critical. You may need to re-look at that metadata structure to optimize that for digital, such as incorporating SEO keywords, search engine optimization, or really tailoring that to whatever integrations or whatever role that DAM is going to play in pushing content to your various platforms. Your documented or your standard operating procedures should also be updated, and make sure that those are crystal clear. In a lot of cases, you know, through this digital strategy, those are going to take more of a front seat and be more important than ever to make sure that things are being done consistently and in the manner that we've established them to be. Look at effective and efficient integrations. This one is a little bit of a slippery slope. We hear a lot about integrations. Don't do an integration just to do an integration, but make sure that integration is doing something to help you or eliminating manual steps. So look at effective and efficient integrations to help you along the way. And then, of course, last but not least, but make sure DAM is the single source for final digital content. Don't have any other platforms out there that can tempt people to drop content into, so that, you know, it's in an area where only a certain group has the ability to see it. Make DAM the single source of truth. So we've just got about 2 minutes left here. Let's talk about next steps. Where do you go from here? We've covered a lot. I've talked really fast. We only have 20 minutes here, but where do you go from here as a next step? Got 4 things that you can do here, starting tomorrow and extending in the near term here. Number 1 is creating and adapting that DAM strategy. So if you've already got one, pull that back out, dust it off, see does that still align, and revisit that and incorporate your digital vision in that DAM strategy, or establish one if you don't already have one. The second is developing that digital coalition. You're going to be the one to spearhead this, or maybe someone else in your organization is going to be the one to spearhead this, but let them know that there are going to be others that support them, and really establish that advocacy group that is going to represent and push for a digital engagement strategy at your organization. What's really important here is scheduling time to meet on a regular cadence. Oftentimes the stakeholders, the creatives, everyone who's involved is very, very busy. So make sure you put a regular cadence on the calendar to reserve time specifically for this initiative. Number 3 is one of my favorites, again, accounting for change management. So just make sure this doesn't fall off. Make sure you've got a plan for change management and that you stick to it and you execute it. Don't let that fall by the wayside. And the last is maintaining an agile mindset. Know that things are going to change. Know that there's going to be a refinement and adjustments needed, and be open to that along the way. Some of that may be within your control. Some of it may be conditions, goals, or organizational strategy that's ultimately going to change over time. So be flexible and know that things are going to adjust. That's all I've got in terms of time today. If you'd like to discuss more, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or my email address is on the screen. Thank you to Henry Stewart for letting me have the time here today, and thank you all for attending. Looking forward to catching up with you sometime in the near future. Thank you.